A 2022 survey found that 67% of people believe their financial stress would disappear if they simply earned more money, but 5 decades of behavioral research tells a completely different story. But here's what nobody tells you about that raise you've been working toward. There is a mechanism in your brain that is designed to guarantee you will feel just as financially anxious 6 months after getting it as you did the day before. If you've ever hit a financial milestone, a raise, a bonus, paying off a debt, felt incredible for a few weeks, then found yourself right back to feeling like it is never quite enough, that is not a discipline problem. So what is actually happening? There is a psychological pattern that behavioral economists have studied for over 5 decades, and it explains why no income level ever feels like enough. Understanding it will not make you richer, but it will permanently change how you relate to money in a way that most financial content never goes near. Let's break down the hedonic treadmill. Picture Marcus, 32 years old, project manager earning $68,000 a year, and he's been pushing for a promotion for 2 years straight. He finally gets it, $84,000 a year, a new title, and for about 3 weeks, Marcus feels genuinely incredible. He goes out to dinner more, upgrades a couple of subscriptions, starts browsing apartments in a slightly better neighborhood. By month 3, the $84,000 is just his salary, the new floor, not the ceiling. And the same financial anxiety that lived at $68,000 has quietly moved in at $84,000 too. Marcus is not unusual, and he did not do anything wrong. He is experiencing exactly what the research predicts will happen to virtually everyone who receives a meaningful income increase. A longitudinal study tracking thousands of workers over multiple years found that within 6 months of a significant raise, reported life satisfaction had returned to pre-raise baseline levels in 78% of participants. The number changed, the feeling did not. So why does this happen? The answer starts with understanding how your brain actually processes good. Your brain does not experience the world in absolutes, it experiences contrast. When you move from $68,000 to $84,000, your brain registers that as a genuine gain, releases dopamine, and you feel the upgrade. That part is real. But your brain is not built to sustain that heightened state indefinitely because a brain in permanent celebration mode cannot function or keep scanning for threats. So it recalibrates quickly, automatically, and without asking your permission, treating the new income level as the new normal. Psychologists call this process hedonic adaptation, and it is one of the most consistently replicated phenomena in all of behavioral science. Think of it like moving into a new apartment. The first week you notice everything, the light, the space, the quiet, and by week 6 you barely register it at all. The same mechanism operates on income, on possessions, on status, on almost every positive change you can make to your material circumstances. What was once a financial ceiling becomes a floor, and your internal reference point for what feels like enough shifts upward automatically to match. This is the hedonic treadmill. You run, you make real progress, but the ground beneath you moves at exactly the same speed. And here's where it gets more interesting. The treadmill does not just operate on your income number, it operates on every single upgrade you attach to that income. The nicer apartment, the newer car, the subscription that felt like a luxury in January, all of it gets absorbed into your baseline within weeks to months, becoming invisible, expected, simply part of what life is supposed to feel like. Researchers Brickman and Campbell first formally named this pattern in 1971, and the decades of research that followed only reinforced how automatic and powerful the adaptation process actually is. One of the most striking data sets looked at lottery winners, people who had received sudden, life-changing financial windfalls with no effort attached. Within 12 months of winning, their reported happiness levels had returned to statistically indistinguishable levels from where they were before the win. The money was permanent, the change in circumstances was real, but the emotional elevation was temporary. Now consider what that implies for incremental income growth, raises that arrive gradually, expected, earned over years. If a lottery win cannot sustain elevated happiness beyond 12 months, a standard 15 to 20% salary increase has even less emotional staying power. Back to Marcus. By month 6, he is not thinking about the distance between where he was at $68,000 and where he is now. He is thinking about the colleague who earns $95,000. Social comparison is the second engine running the treadmill, and it is just as powerful as adaptation. Harvard researchers found in a widely cited study that the majority of people, when given the choice, would prefer to earn $50,000 in a world where the average is $25,000 over earning $100,000 in a world where the average is $200,000. We do not measure financial well-being in absolute terms. We measure it relative to the reference group we can see most clearly. So even when your actual income rises meaningfully, if the lifestyles you're exposed to rise at the same rate, your subjective experience of financial progress stays flat. This is why lifestyle inflation is not purely a spending discipline failure. It is partly a social recalibration process. When income increases, people tend to spend more time in environments that reflect higher spending, consume media featuring different financial norms, and unconsciously update their definition of what a reasonable standard of living looks like. The reference class shifts without any conscious decision to shift it. And here's the part most financial channels skip entirely. Simply knowing about the hedonic treadmill is not sufficient to escape it, because it operates below the level of conscious decision-making. It is happening before you have a chance to intervene. A 2023 study published in the Journal of Behavioral Decision-Making found that people consistently and significantly underestimate how quickly they will adapt to positive life changes, including income increases. They predicted their elevated satisfaction would last far longer than it did, almost every time. Let's talk about the practical consequences, because they extend well beyond just feeling less happy about a raise. The hedonic treadmill is the reason the thought, "I'll finally feel less stressed about money when I'm earning more," is almost always a deferred illusion rather than a realistic prediction. Because the stress doesn't come from the number itself, it comes from the gap between where you are and where your internal reference point sits. As income rises, the reference point rises with it, and the gap tends to stay roughly the same. This is why 62% of Americans describe themselves as living paycheck to paycheck, a figure that has remained stable across a decade of rising median household income. More income, same perceived gap. There is a second consequence that is just as significant. The treadmill creates a motivational trap. Because the experience of enough keeps receding by the same distance you cover, many people exist in a permanent state of not quite there yet, which effectively prevents them from experiencing the financial security they are genuinely working toward. They are deferring satisfaction to a future income level that, when reached, will feel almost identical to this one. Slow down here for a moment, because this is where it either clicks or it doesn't. The hedonic treadmill is not a character flaw, a lack of gratitude, or evidence that you are somehow materialistic. It is a feature of human cognition, one that most likely evolved because it kept our ancestors motivated to continue pursuing resources rather than becoming dangerously complacent after any single gain. The problem is that a motivational system calibrated for resource scarcity in a survival environment is severely miscalibrated for the kind of financial stability that modern income levels can actually provide. Your brain processes every new income level the way it would have processed finding a reliable food source 100,000 years ago. Good. Now find more. That is a genuinely rough operating system for someone trying to feel settled at a $90,000 salary. So what actually interrupts the cycle? This is where the behavioral science gets specific, because researchers have identified particular categories of spending and behavior that are significantly more resistant to adaptation than others. Experiential spending, money directed at experiences rather than physical possessions, shows markedly slower adaptation rates across multiple studies. A 2021 study found that experiential purchases continued generating positive emotional recall up to 24 months later, while equivalent material purchases had dropped back to baseline within 6 to 8 weeks. The prevailing explanation is that experiences are inherently variable, no two are identical, they change in memory, and they are social in nature, all of which prevents the brain from building a stable new normal around them the way it does with objects. But here's the more counterintuitive insight that most people miss entirely. The research suggests the core issue is not the amount of money at all. It is the relationship you have with expectation and arrival. Most people cycle between two states: striving forward-focused, chasing the next milestone, and briefly satisfied during the narrow window between achieving something and adapting to it. A third state exists that very few people deliberately practice, what researchers call savoring, consciously engaging with and extending the satisfaction of what is already present. Studies show that savoring behavior slows the adaptation process by an estimated 30 to 40%, not by suppressing ambition, but by extracting more total satisfaction from what is already there before the baseline shifts. This is not a budgeting tip or a spending strategy. It is a cognitive reorientation toward the present moment of your finances rather than the next version of them. Because the problem was never the salary number. It was the relationship between the number and the expectation architecture built around it. Marcus, 6 months into $84,000, is not anxious because he doesn't earn enough to be comfortable. He is anxious because his internal reference point has already treated $84,000 as the baseline, and his expectations are already priced into a higher number. The raise did not fail him. His brain's adaptation mechanism worked exactly as it was designed to, and he simply was not prepared for that. The question that most financial thinking never gets to is not how do I earn enough to finally feel settled, because that number, treated as a finish line, does not exist. The question is, what relationship do I want to have with the money I am working toward, both before I get there and after I do? If the research on this is clear on one thing, it is that financial contentment is not a destination you arrive at with sufficient income. It is a practice you return to regardless of income. The people who report the highest sustained financial well-being in long-term studies are not consistently the highest earners. They are the ones who have separated their sense of security from the next income level. The hedonic treadmill is real, it is biological, and it will run in the background of your financial life whether you understand it or not. But understanding it means you can stop waiting for the next raise to finally be the one that makes everything feel like enough. Drop a comment below if you've noticed this in your own life. The moment you hit a financial goal and realize the goalpost had already moved without you deciding to move it. I break down financial psychology like this every week. If this kind of deep dive into the mechanics behind how we relate to money is useful to you, there is more where this came from. Next time, I'm going into the psychology of lifestyle inflation specifically, how it starts, how it accelerates once income rises, and what the behavioral research actually shows about reversing it.